My name's Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Jimmy, what weekend is it, dude?
November 15, 2019.
And where the fuck are we?
We are in Kansas right now.
It's true.
Kansas City. Yeah, here to do a signing at Elite Comics. This is us on the road.
Yes, a roadshow, our first roadshow.
Yeah, it's we've been talking about being able to be more portable, and this is kind of the beginning steps of that. Taking some equipment out. We're going to be doing this more in the coming year, I'm sure.
We had a good signing at Elite Comics. Shouts to Bill, the guy who runs that spot, man.
We had a great signing there. I'll be honest. I've had a good trip. This is I don't know, hour about 20 on the road today. So it's been a long day, but it's pretty good. Like, flew out of Pittsburgh this morning. Everything has been ideal. Mm-hmm. Like, this trip has been fantastic in every way. And Wednesday, good day to fly.
Yes.
At least today was a good day. No security lines, no delays, knock on wood. Thank you, airlines. That has been the bane of my existence lately, so it's been nice to have a couple of flights that get off on time.
And everybody just relaxed.
Yeah, man, for sure. Definitely must be not a heavy travel day compared to the weekends or whenever we're used to.
And it's pretty cool that we initially flew out of Pittsburgh, pretty small airport with not too much going on, and we're going to be going home in a couple of hours.
Yes.
Flying out of Kansas City, and that airport looked tiny, so I don't expect much delays. The only bullshit is going to be on the way to the airport, morning rush hour traffic, all of that nonsense, dude. So to me, that's hacking the air travel system, because we're going to have a layover in Chicago, and that's a motherfucker, man. Long ass security lines, aggravated ass people running, the TSA operation, man. So to me, I call this hacking the air travel, because it's just like, you go to the small spot, just get through that gate, the security approval gate, clear sailing. Like, it is what it is from that point on.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I like this Wednesday at a comic shop events.
We'll make it a tour, man. Every Wednesday we'll be somewhere.
It's pretty awesome. I've been running around excited about a comment somebody left that every Wednesday is like Christmas. I love it. I love New Comic Book Day. It's been too long since I've been in New Comic Book Day stores on Wednesdays, and it's become kind of regular the last several weeks I've been there. It's great energy. It's fun. It reminds me of when I used to go to New Comic Book Day every Wednesday. It's awesome. So yeah, great turnout at Elite. Thank you for everybody that came out. Thank you, William, for bringing us out and apparently promoting the event, because certainly the response was there.
Sold a lot of books today.
Sold a lot of books, shook a lot of hands, talked a lot of comics.
Ate a lot of barbecue.
Ate a lot of barbecue.
I ate so much meat today, dude.
I am in after this is done and we shut it down, I'm still just going to be sitting in this chair for a while.
One of the cool things that I sort of discovered today, like, I didn't know that this was part of the plan, but the profits of what the store brought in are going to a toy drive, something that Bill and his crew has been doing for like the past 5 years, man.
Yeah, amazing story and description. They raise all this money, and then they actually get lists from this children's hospital and fulfill that list. They do a shopping event to go spend this money that they raise, and then wrap gifts, give them to the families to give to these children. It's amazing. Like, it's good and good on top of it, and pretty fun just hearing like the different people around his store and the roles that they do.
Yeah.
One of them specializes in coupons, so not only are they raising this money, then when it's time to check out, they're like really stretching this to get the most out of it. Been doing it for years, support all around the community, and it's pretty great. A lot of comic book shops, that's a big part of their existence, is connection to the community. This is one of the best connections I've heard about.
Pretty easy travel on the way out, like we said, man. But we had a little inspirational moment for me on the airplane whenever you were sitting there. What is it you were working on again, Jim? I'll get a slip up.
My 1970s horror grand design.
Jim is, you heard it here. Jim is working on Quasar Grand Design, and he was in the aisle behind me. I'm in front, and I see this lady coming up the aisle, going to use the bathroom or something. We were in the very back of the plane, and we each had our own row, and I saw her.
Which is the way to fly, let me tell you.
Yeah. And I saw her, like, Jim is just down working, and I saw her eye kind of catch what Jim was doing and get big and go like wow, like mouth wow, and then her and the flight attendant were kind of staring over Jim's shoulder for a minute, and it took them about 3 minutes, I would say, to get the courage to bother you and tap you on the shoulder and just say like, what is this, man? And the reason I call it inspirational is because we've had many of these moments in our travels where like people see the work, they see it being done, they see that it's done by the human hand. Basically 100% of the people who see it are utterly fascinated. So the inspirational thing to me is comics can have a bigger readership. Like there's a way.
Yeah.
There's a way for us to increase the readership, because I have such empirical data that if people just see the stuff being created, it captures their imagination, and it makes them so curious. So it's like, how do we generate that into creating a new comic reader? Now the funny thing to the Kayfabers and everybody else out there is these two people on the airplane, they know what Jim's working on. They're the only two people, and they're not a part of the Cartoonist Kayfabe community. They don't know shit about comics. You guys gotta track these motherfuckers down. You know, that's what they said about like Area 51. It's like, don't storm Area 51. Hang out in the bar that's like a mile outside of Area 51 when those guys are leaving for the day. Get them bastards drunk and ask them about the aliens.
That's hilarious. You know, it's kind of great, the tools that we now have, because what I was doing is I'm coloring pages.
Okay, so it's a color book.
On my on my iPad, I'm coloring pages. I have my earbuds in, listening to podcasts. It's almost like me being at home working. So I was definitely in the zone whenever I realized there was a little bit of an audience there. But I'm with you, Ed. The response, and I've seen it in other times, but that response does indicate to me like there is a connection to comics. People know what comics are. You know, this. I don't know how old these people were. Probably in their 30s and 40s, I would guess. So, you know, our age, adults, interested in comics, recognized comics, had an interest in it. And I had a similar incident one time on a flight. I was reading your roughs from X-Men Grand Design, one of the issues. I had the PDF you had sent me or whatever, reading it on my iPad. And this is in black and white and, you know, kind of raw layout. So not a polished, finished piece. And an 70-year-old lady sitting next to me is like, are those comics that you're reading? Had a long discussion with her then. She had questions about it, very interested, and was at least in her 70s. It was an older lady, could kind of figure out they were comics and wanted to know more. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. I mean, like coming back from Japan, that's another one of those examples where it's like everybody's reading comics.
Yes.
So it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun.
And I think maybe that's the next level. Like people in the game have been prospering from filling voids in the kind of like potential comics readership that could be mined, could be tapped into. So, you know, just name a person, you know, Raina, Gene Luen Yang, Noelle Stevenson, like that hip hop comic is pretty fresh. We all know that. But it's filling these voids that just haven't been addressed in comics. And I think as we progress, we keep doing that. That's going to bring more people into the fold. I remember sitting next to Lucy Knisley at the Emerald City Con, and dozens of women came to the festival solely to get an autograph from her. You know, so she created comic book readers. Like, it's in us to do that, and you know, we do that enough times, man. Like maybe a little bit of it is kind of like paying it forward, but I'm gonna tell you, like, Lucy's doing okay. You know, Gene Luen Yang's doing okay. So like, find the gap, fill it. You're gonna prosper because you're gonna have the monopoly on something, and you're gonna create some readers. Like, steer a little out of the self-indulgence, perhaps, as creators, and you know, maybe explore some of your interests that other people might also be interested in, and you're gonna create readers, and it's gonna just make the ecosystem more healthy in our game.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw Ron Wimberly just posted on Instagram, Spike Lee's adapting Prince of Cats. So it's the perfect example. It's Shakespeare, it's fashionable, it's attractive, it's well designed, it's all of these things. It's a sophisticated story source. So yeah, I think that it goes in all directions. Those gaps are filling. Like,
yes.
Whatever your interest is, however you want to engage in comics, more and more of those things are now available to you. I used to think like I don't know, man, 15 or 20 years ago, for Christmas is coming up, and I would think like, I want to get everybody I buy a gift for, it's going to be a comic. You know, graphic novels were starting to become popular at the time. That's not easy. I don't know that I've ever had a year where I've actually done that.
Right.
But in my mind, it was like, that's the thing. Like that would be the greatest thing ever to pull off. We're getting really close to that point.
Yeah, and what will happen is it'll create genres because you just need an outlier to prove that people would be into this thing, and then the piggyback crew is going to come. Now you have a genre of American food comics.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Or American comics for that about pregnant life or something. It's like all that. Like, let's have it all, so that we get the better part of the population reading the shit, man. Because those people, they didn't quit jabbering on that airplane, man.
You know what's funny too is the guys like, man, someone should do a comic about relationships and breaking up and this, and it's like, they're out there, man. They're out there. Like, go. Let me refer you to some titles. So yeah, it's almost, you know, there's a thirst, and it's a lack of awareness of where to find the stuff, because it's like there are books like that. Like, you can find a comic that's relationship stuff. Again, not giving away what I'm working on.
Okay,
but
so it's a color book about relationships.
There's so much more I want to say.
Cloak and Dagger, Grand Design.
You know what? The other thing that it made me think of is we all went to Ape one year. Me, you, Tom Scioli, and we all flew on the same flight.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that plane was almost empty, and we all had our own like rows again. Which again, that's the way to fly.
Yeah.
Your own row.
It was like our own private,
very nice.
It was like our own PJ, man. There was like 13 people on that flight.
It was unusual, but Tom, in work mode, had turned like a row of seats into a studio, man.
Totally.
All 3 trays were down, papers everywhere. He was coloring, I guess, on a laptop. It was just like, it was like a drawing studio. It was amazing.
That was that era too, man. But he was like a legendary Pittsburgh character, even sort of like before we even started kicking it, because he had a proper job, man. And for at least a small period of time, for about 6 months, he had 2 monthly comics from Image,
Yes.
Freedom Force and Godland, and he had a proper day job. So he would catch the bus and be inking on the bus to and from work.
And somehow still meeting up with us once a week to talk about making comics.
Yes, totally.
But yeah, inking on the bus, I always remember that too.
And so do the people of Pittsburgh. Like, who the fuck is this guy inking on the bus? Like, you know, painting pictures.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. But like the questions they were asking, it was so fun, the people on the airplane, because I always attributed this to the Pittsburgh attitude, but that's my own kind of like micro, kind of like ignorance, because like Pittsburgh's
Sure.
all I know. And what I call the Pittsburgh attitude is just like these thoughts of like any kind of like creative endeavor or aspirational conquests of like, you know, doing something interesting or getting out of like the humdrum of like what we all agree is like what you're supposed to do, is met with confusion, befuddlement. And it was like a constant stream of that, like okay, so you're working on something for beep, now do you actually like print this up yourself and blah blah blah, and it's just like they just fully didn't get that this is like you're a professional in the game, and this is like going to see the light of day, human hands are behind it, and I don't know what we could do with that information, but it happens routinely.
It is really interesting. Like every now and then you'll be in a situation where you're fielding these questions.
Yeah.
And they're so different than like if I were going to talk to, you know, we talk in front of groups too, and we talk about our books and what we do and stuff. What I have to say is completely different than whenever I hear questions from people, and it's like, oh, this is your interest is completely different than what I thought. Left to my own devices, I would bore the shit out of you people.
Right.
If I were just talking about this from my perspective,
Yeah.
it'd be totally different. It's fascinating to see, though. You know,
Yeah.
it's there. Why would they know anything about publishing? You know, that's not probably never thought about it before in their lives until they saw it, and then you know it kind of comes up. So very fun to that. Those are civilians, like
Total
outright
civilians.
civilian.
Yeah.
They have no idea what New Comic Book Day is.
No. And they don't care about your Winsor Newton number 2s and shit like that.
No, that will never be interesting to them ever.
There was this one time, man. Simon Hanselman and myself were on what is it out there in the Pacific Northwest? You guys have the Bolt bus that shuttles between Portland and Seattle and Vancouver. We were on whatever that bus is. We call it the mega bus over our way, and we were just chopping it up, you know, like I was getting to know Simon at that time. It's probably like the second or third time I hung out with him for any extended period. We were crossing the border going to Vancouver, and we had a couple of hours to chat. So what do you chat with somebody who you know makes comics, but you don't know anything else about them? You talk motherfucking comics. And that's exactly what we were doing. And I guess we were getting pretty passionate and forgetting about like everybody else, so we were pretty loud about it. And the bus driver heard, man, and he starts to like weigh in. Oh, so you guys like make comics or something? Yeah, we do. We're going to a little festival, blah blah blah. And the driver's, you know, as we're talking now he's in the conversation, man. So he's like, you know what they have to make a comic about? There needs to be a comic that explores the far depths of the ocean, because we've already had enough pop culture things that happen in like outer space, but the majority of the earth is underwater, man, and it hasn't really been explored in pop culture in any significant way.
I'd feel a lot better if this was like the guy sitting behind you and not the driver.
Right, yeah. And Simon's like, oh, you know, we have it figured out. Like we do our thing, man. We sort of know what we're working on, man. In fact, Ed and I are New York Times best-selling authors, and he's like, you know, just keep at it. You know, you're probably going to have a career. Like just, you know, explore your passions, man. You guys might probably do all right.
What could be more proof?
Right? It was super fun, man.
That's so funny.
That's the fun thing about just like when the civilians kind of like come into the cipher, into the bubble, man, and dip their little toes in. It's interesting because it is that outside point of view, you know, like especially the way the internet works these days. We all operate in our own echo chambers, and the comic echo chambers that have existed, I don't know about you, but are weak to me. So it's like we created our own echo chamber, but we're all smart marks. You know what I'm saying, man? Forget about the civilians out there, man. But once again, these people saw your stuff, they expressed an interest. There's got to be a way to weave them motherfuckers in there. You know what I think it might be? Just off the top of my head, we got to stay armed with like our Free Comic Book Day comics.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
That's best practices. You're exactly right.
And it's just like, boom. What was that one in Living Color skit where the guys were like pretending to be like shady music agents, and like it's David Alan Grier and it's Tommy Davidson, and David Alan Grier would be like, oh, I'm all fresh out of cards, and then Tommy Davidson would be like, bam.
Yes,
that'll be us, man. Oh, I'm all fresh out of comics.
That's such a good lesson, Ed, and I'm guilty of this myself. Like, also keep those copies in your car, keep them in the bag, in the backpack, any of that stuff, like wherever you're at, because those are our cards.
There's business cards. Every comic that you make, anything that you make is a business card.
Yes.
You know, like the biggest example of late, like in my experience, is that dude Takashi Okazaki who created Afro Samurai. He made these self-published comics. He and his friends, they put money together and they created these vinyl toys of Afro Samurai. They made 1,000 of them. We'll call it 1,000 very boutique, premium. Patrick Bateman from American Psycho would hate you for having such a cool business card.
Yes.
But that's what it is. And it just so happened that some New York executive at some like TV channel saw this across the world and was like, let's get in touch with this. This needs to be on TV. That's how this shit happens.
Yeah. And you know, you had mentioned about the oddness of these kinds of conversations with civilians. I thought about it early on. Whenever you say echo chamber, like I can remember at some point everybody that I really talked to about comics were just me and my buddies making comics.
Yeah.
And by that I mean like mini comics. It wasn't stuff people were reading, just other artists. I was trading them with whoever I could at shows and things. And that was a really small microcosm.
Yeah.
Like everybody I was talking to fit that profile of like, we all have our mini comic, let's trade. That's a very tight conversation that you're having. And I can remember early on, like once I started doing shows and talking to a little, more people, and especially more busier shows, more people are coming through the shows. So I was talking to people that were comic readers, and it was like, you have to talk different. Like they don't care about the brush that you use to draw this. Whenever they ask you about the comic, they don't want the technical side of you making it. They want to know what it's about, the characters, the story, stuff like that. And it was like this awareness of like, okay, speak differently to the reader than to your fellow creator. And it's the same thing with somebody that's like completely has never been in a comic book store.
Yeah.
It's again like a whole different type of language that you're using with that person. And my world is there aren't a lot of people in my life that aren't making comics or reading comics. So whenever somebody that's completely unconnected shows up, it's kind of like we're speaking different languages.
It's a good
and you
thing.
got to remind yourself of that. It is a good thing. It's a way to kind of like rethink what you're saying, how you're describing this stuff, who your audience is, who your audience might be if you just said the right thing.
One of the best ways to kind of practice your patter, practice your language, practice your ambassadorship of comics to civilians is by getting a table at TCAF, a festival that is in the freaking heart of Toronto, a world-class city, and the entry fee to get in as a consumer is the price of $0. So there's just this thing that happens when a human being is out on the streets and they just see thousands of people over there and they just wander in. And whenever I would have tables there, man, I almost exclusively would talk to just fresh people, and it's like it's your duty to put on your best face and bring them into the fold, man, like frickin' Charles Manson. Come with me.
We are doing so good for a minute.
Come with me. I'll show you the way.
Yes, that's exactly right. So I got to
Come
brush
join-
up on my Charles Manson and expand this audience.
I call it the cult of Kayfabe.
Minus the murders.
Right. We did a live stream last week, man, to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel, and we talked about a ton of shit. We did like a 2-hour thing. I brought up Rufus Dayglow, British cartoonist, worked for 2000 AD and stuff, and I mentioned it in the stream on that episode, but I didn't finish the story, so I like rewatched the broadcast and was like, I left a pretty cool thing out that I know you would dig, and it's about the origins of Deadline magazine.
One of my favorite comics publications that I've ever come across.
Yeah.
And one that you could put in front of probably a certain non-comics audience. I don't know that it would work on that 75-year-old woman on the airplane, but I think that somebody that's interested in music, pop culture, different things like that, it's the kind of magazine someone like that would respond to.
Yeah. So Rufus has drawn Tank Girl comics. Rufus has worked on animating Gorillaz music videos and doing stuff like that. So I knew that there was this like Hewlett connection, and I was like, dude, what, can you get in Jamie's ear, man, and get him to freaking publish that Fireball? My homeboy Jimmy had to like make bootleg Fireball hardcovers, and he basically was like, that'll never happen. He's like, Jamie Hewlett always wanted to be a rock star, and now he's a rock star. He doesn't care about that stuff. But we would get into those conversations, man. Segues right into Deadline.
So, by the way, my one-of-a-kind Fireball book price has now gone up tenfold. All you guys that keep bugging me about buying that thing.
I do want it too.
I don't blame any of you, but it's not for sale.
So here's the way it works, man. In that weird art school, I forget the name of it, but somebody will put something in the comments about the art school that Philip Bond, Jamie Hewlett, and Glenn Dillon all went to. Glenn is the important cat because Bond and Hewlett were like, oh, your last name's Dillon and you draw, and we really like this cartoonist over at 2000 AD called Steve Dillon. And Glenn's like, yeah, that's my brother. And they're like, what? You got to introduce us, blah, 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 like all that kind of thing. And something happened where the connection, like Glenn made the introductions to Steve, because you remember Steve Dillon did Deadline stuff.
Yeah.
Made the introductions to Steve, and through that, there's a rich frickin' family in London called the Astor family. Like, I've heard the name, and they're associated with like extreme wealth. And I think the guy's name is Tom Astor, super rich dude that likes comics. You know, you find this happens. These patrons of comics. You know, there's the Indian oil family who frickin' brings like one Fantagraphics person there a year. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
Like this exists everywhere, and yeah, I think it was Brett Ewins. Was Brett Ewins an editor?
I think so. That sounds
He
right.
was involved. So it was like they sort of like worked on this like Astor dude, and the guy's like, sounds great. Like, I will fund it.
Wow.
So it was pretty much like, it never was like that profitable of a thing, but it's like Rick Rubin's Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Where
I
it's
do.
like, I love this thing and I'm just gonna fund it and let it keep rocking. But basically that was the genesis, man. It was like Jamie Hewlett, Philip Bond, stoked to make comics. Glenn Dillon is related to Steve Dillon. Glenn makes introductions to Steve. So now there's 3 really good kids at this art school. And then Brett Ewins factors in somehow. I think he was with Steve Dillon. Because he was doing professional 2000 AD work. And then, so now there's 5 guys. And then the music part is that guy from Blur, who is the music part of Gorillaz. Like, he was at that art school too or something. He was like roommates with them. Shaky Kane fits into this somehow. I forget that part. But
Yeah, I was wondering when he was going to enter because he's in there from the get-go. Like, the earliest deadlines I have, Shaky Kane is in there.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
They showed up with like an incredible team.
Yeah.
And guys that were, you know, pretty different styles, coming from different backgrounds, you know, artistically, which is part of, again, what makes Deadline so great and so fascinating, is it didn't look like 2000 AD.
Right.
You know, it didn't look like whatever comics from, you know, the early 90s.
Let me ask you this. Would you agree that on the surface, when you look through it, it does look what I would call British? Like, I could see that in 2 seconds and call that a British thing. And one of the things that I would point to sort of box it into that category is the color. Like, some of it is about the color technique, the fact that it isn't 4-color process like American comics, but there's like a clashing of colors that I associate with the typical, like, not the typical British palette, but like what I think of as really it's Brendan McCarthy, and I think it's Brendan McCarthy's influence on the color of British comics, because like Hewlett has that.
It's fascinating because like Brendan McCarthy is what I was thinking of, and I don't know if he's even in Deadline, but there's some kind of like stylistically that is like the code. You know, that's the Rosetta Stone to sort of like, certainly to make it very British to me. That is the piece, the link.
Yeah, it's like yellows against purples against,
Right, it's
like,
those secondary colors.
Yeah.
There's even, you know, like you even see it in Watchmen, which has
Right.
that British flavor, and it's like, you know, I mean, it's a DC Comics, but some British creators there, but it is that palette is a big chunk of it. That's interesting. It definitely had a sense of other to me. And I guess British, you know, like if I had to think about what that other was, like it does feel British. Probably because I was seeing some of those talent would appear either in Vertigo comics or kind of their influence would appear in Vertigo comics.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did have some kind of a British feel. Which is interesting because you have like the 2000. When I think British comics, I think like 2000 AD. I think Deadline, and they're kind of different. One is like pulpy genre stuff, and one is like design and sort of futuristic or something, or very contemporary, maybe illustration, things of that sort. And then you have like Eddie Campbell as like the third piece, and there's a whole small press. You know, like I'm kind of thinking of him as maybe the head of that small press, but you know, you have that like British small press of the 80s and 90s.
So Eddie Campbell's a British guy. For some reason, I always thought of him as like Australian.
I think he lived in Australia for a long time.
That's what fucks me up.
Yeah, and I think he made comics about living in Australia.
Fucks me up
so
further.
much auto-bio stuff, but I'm pretty sure he's from Great Britain originally.
Dig.
That's really, yeah.
Rufus is a cool cat. Like,
that's a lot of good info.
I really like. I'm working on doing some equipment upgrades, figuring out this software called OBS that's going to allow for me to have Skype interviews and then like weave those videos into a master video, record it. I'll get better audio on my end, do everything we can with like the Skype caller, and it's just going to open the world up to us, man, because Rufus is like buying a storefront, like a building in France, and so he's not as easily accessible as Tom is. You know what I'm saying? we need to branch out, and I think in Kayfabe Year 2, there's going to be a lot more interviews. I'm going to be hitting a lot of people on the jack, man, to just have focus interviews and maybe even have regulars, man. I would like to have like talk to Ben Mara semi-regularly. But Rufus is like a fount of information, man. Like he actually seemed a little surprised that I knew who Martin Emmond was and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was because of you, and I told him, I'm like, dude, I discovered his work like 5 months ago because of my homeboy Jim, and he knew Martin Emmond, and I was like, was very good friends, super tight, and I was
Rufus,
like, Rufus Dayglow,
not me.
Yeah, Rufus and Martin, and I was just like, dude, you know, Martin is not with us any longer, rest in peace. But I was like, he will not be forgotten, you know, like the art is too cool, and I just discovered him 5 months ago. I've been thinking about that dude a lot, and I can't believe you even are bringing him up right at this moment, because his comics have been on my mind. That one, Lobo, and White Trash is fresh comics. You know, it's like some of the stuff at the top of my to-read pile. And I'm going to have to he'll get on the channel, man. And, you know, I'll fold you in. Like, it'll be a good conversation.
What a random, like running into him, you know, when you posted a couple pics of that and stuff, it was like, in my mind, that's random.
Yeah.
I know nothing about him. I knew he'd drawn some Tank Girl and stuff, but I didn't know any of his story. I've never met Rufus Dayglow. And like, yeah, a fountain of knowledge, as you say.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and it's just random.
Yeah, and he lived in Japan for a while when he was a kid, and just like has all this knowledge of that stuff. Like, he was schooling me on like mech robots. He's like, yes, this is Votoms, and Votoms does this and that, and this is Dogram, and I'm like, what the, like, never heard of any of this stuff.
Yeah,
like,
wow.
but like that's what I mean. When I was out there, everybody was an otaku for like their thing.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And in his thing, you look at him, if you were to be prejudicial, like you would think that he would be into, like, I don't know, just full on like punk. Like, you would think that robot mecha warriors would be too nerdy for that dude, because he's like got like, you know, this fresh like leather jackets and like tattoos and shit. But he's like, no, it's like Voltron as you could get. In fact, Voltron is like too passe. It's like, it's got to be deeper.
That too nerdy thing, you know, everything's niche now.
Yeah.
Like we all have something.
Yeah.
And there's just whatever that something is, you can get as much of it as possible at this point. I had one other thought on Japan.
Yeah.
So we're in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
We have giant rooms, suites, like
Right.
it's huge.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, first, this would be 6 rooms in New York. This might be 8 rooms in Tokyo.
Yeah, definitely a suite. It would definitely be a suite for sure.
You can tell like how dense the population is whenever you travel by the size of the hotel rooms where you're staying.
Yeah.
And we are definitely like, we're spread out here.
Yeah, it was interesting, like even like landing, because you could get a good view of the landscape, and there was just like lots of land.
Yes.
Lots of land and houses like very far apart from one another, big houses. So I feel like your dollar could go really far, man, in the real estate game. Like if you wanted to just have a fresh giant house like away from a lot of people. And we have some cartoonist homies who have sort of taken the scene up on that and have like nice palatial estates out this way.
That's the other takeaway. Coming to Kansas City, like I always try to look into like, oh, where we're going, what's some history there, comics related or whatever. And you know, the big ones. And as you say, there are a lot of cartoonists around here. It seems like there's a really healthy comics making scene in Kansas City. We're here less than 24 hours, so our engagement is somewhat limited. But I mean, like the big ones for me are Kevin Nolan's not too far from here, and Richard Corbin is nearby. And it's like any of these like the cartoonists who are writing and drawing and coloring and doing all of this stuff, it's pretty rare in the past. You know, they mostly live like in the undergrounds or sort of off of the grid of what would be like mainstream comics history. And both of those two names, they're there. Like they're all around comics history, mainstream, alternative, undergrounds. Like they're very atypical. When Kevin Nolan is doing coloring and drawing and lettering his own stuff at DC, I don't know anybody else that's doing that stuff in the mid 80s, you know, for Marvel or DC.
Closest guy is Klaus.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty neat, like thinking of those guys. And you know, like we talk about cold climates are good places for art makers, for creative people to get work done, because you get into those cold months, you need to do something inside. You have to have some inside hobbies or practices.
We're getting there in Pittsburgh, boy.
Yes, we are.
Right now it's colder there than it is right here at this moment. And on the plane, I was just laughing like, God damn it, Jimmy, we really did it wrong. It's cold as fucking Pittsburgh, and we're going to Kansas City. We're not going to Tahiti. We're not going to Honolulu. We're not going to Los Angeles.
We're going to get better at this, Ed.
I think so.
The longer we do Cartoonist Kayfabe, the more we're going to figure out these little pieces. We're going to be doing signings in the South in these winter months.
That's true.
In the future.
Yeah, but it also, like, one of the South things is Richmond, and I think they get snow.
Yeah, less than Pittsburgh, but it does get cold down there. And we should say at this point, we will be in Charlotte in a little over a week from now.
Yeah.
At the end of November, is it the 24th?
4th or 5th or something like that, man. It's that weekend.
Yes, it's local comic shop day. We're going to be at Heroes Are Not Hard to Find in Charlotte. And we'll be doing signings there. We'll be talking comics, and I think we plan to do a live episode there.
Yeah, we were planning to do one here, but the shop just wasn't set up for that, man. So we're here, man, after the signing, full of freaking barbecue.
It's ridiculous how I feel right now.
Yeah, I know, right? Like
we threatened to eat a lot of barbecue here, and we did.
Yeah, and I couldn't. Jim's the man because he finished his, and I simply couldn't. And there was a girl across the table from us, man, telling us about like these clothing drives that she's been going on, and you know she's instrumental in helping to put together the toy drive and all of this, like help the homeless stuff. And I ate a lot, but I still threw a lot away. You know what I'm saying? And she's talking about all this homeless stuff, and I'm like, fuck. So she guilted you into eating it all.
She did, and I don't regret it, even though it kind of hurts.
Yeah, your insides feel different than mine. I'm sure. And even our fair host, he was like, I was done a half hour ago. But he's still eating. A lot of meat, man. But I'm going to have to get back to fucking juice and vegetables tomorrow.
Yes, yeah. One day off from exercise is about all I could spare after this.
Yeah. And I keep stretching my shirt down because it really, like, when it folds up, it really looks like I got titties again, man. But I walked them shits off.
By the way, I did see some Kayfabe shirts today at the signing, including one of the Make More Comics shirts.
A lot of cool cats, man. A lot of cool cats at the joint. A lot of Kayfabe listeners.
So a couple notes on recent videos. First of all, Wizard episode 36 went up this week.
Yeah.
3 years, man.
3 whole years.
3 years of the Wizard reread. So we'll probably take a little break on Wizard coverage, build up that cushion again. Any takeaways from 3 years? It's
like this, and now it's like slow descent downward in terms of speculation, in terms of the buying dollar of the comic shops in regards to their ordering procedures and stuff. We're not at the bottom yet. It's gonna be 3 years maybe before we see the real fallout. But my first issue is going to be 37 when we start up again, and I imagine that subsequent issues are a lot of Kayfabe's first issues, man. So it's going to be fun to get into. All that said, Tom Palmer Jr. just on his website just posted his last Palmer's Picks, which was Wizard number 74, and I said, man, there probably ain't going to be a review of Wizard 75.
Yeah, it's my surprise has just been going through these. How, like, I thought I read Wizard like 5 years, 6 years, something like that. We're done with my Wizard issues now.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't start at issue 1 when I originally read Wizard. So like my whole Wizard consumption is less than 2 years, right around 2 years worth of issues. And in my mind, it's like this whole, I thought it was spread out over a decade, and it was like 2 years of that like super bubble and then contractions. And like you said, the worst is definitely ahead, yet to come. But it's like, man, it's something rereading these things and seeing the little pieces, knowing what we know now and what was just invisible then.
There's going to be some good stuff in these subsequent ones, man. There's a Rob Liefeld interview in the very next one. That's the reason I bought the magazine. There's going to be Tim Truman interviews. We're going to start to get.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, that's gonna be in the very next. Like, it's like, dude, I have these things memorized.
Yeah, I figured that those initial ones, like whenever we covered the ones that I had bought off my first ones back then, man, I know them like. It's scary how well I know those.
Right.
So I'm sure your first couple of issues are going to be the same deal. Like, you must have read them over and over when you got hold of them. Like, they felt like the secret. If you wanted to make comics, and I did then, and I think you did then, that was it. That felt like the guide. Like, this will teach me.
I still verbatim remember a couple of passages, like Shakespeare from the Rob Liefeld interview, if I may.
Yes, please. Rob Liefeld, Shakespeare.
This is going to be just a quick one.
From your memory.
And it's from that interview. And
do you need a skull to hold?
Alas, poor chap. I knew him, Horatio. I knew him, Marat. You guys could tell we're loopy as fuck because we really should be in bed when we're doing this. But question, or the interviewer, they say everyone gets their 15 minutes of fame. Rob's response, yes, and you have to live with it. And then it goes on from there. It's going to be a good one.
Tormented Rob Liefeld reflecting on this first year and a half or two at Image.
Yes.
Wow.
It's going to be good stuff. There's some fun features along the way, man. Some Todd Klein lettering
Yes.
article. There's going to be this feature where I forget who it is who draws the thing, but they sort of make Xeroxes and give it to like 5 different inkers: Klaus Janson, Palmiotti, Danny Meeke, Scott Williams, and some one other guy. And you get to see like all of their treatments.
I absolutely love that stuff.
That's gonna be sick.
I have lots of how-to books, and one of them is Gary Martin on inking, who inked a lot of Steve Rude stuff, and he has pages like that. So when we get to that in Wizard, I'll be sure and bring the Gary Martin examples, because it has like Kevin Nolan and Mark Schultz and different couple people inking the same set of pencils. So that'll be fun. Speaking of which, I saw my first original Marvel tryout today.
Yeah, that was
I've
really
never
awesome.
seen that in person.
Me neither.
Amazing. Anybody that's unfamiliar with that, it was a big book that Marvel published where you could try it out and send pages into Marvel, like samples. And there were, the whole spectrum of what kind of pages, including some pencils by John Romita Jr. in Blue Line. Amazing to see. It reminds me of that, because it was like, here are your inking samples, here are your pencils for that.
Yeah, and the big thing with that was the when they were selling it, the idea was you're going to have the opportunity to get a job. It was worded in such a way that if you were a goofball, that they could slide you to the side. But it was Mark Bagley who won the tryout kit and never stopped working. Never stopped working for Marvel.
Yeah, man, it's been now at this point 30 years.
Yeah,
at
least,
incredible. another video that posted this week, Ed.
Yes.
A big one.
Yes, Red
The
Room.
reveal of your new comic.
Yes, Red Room. We posted that trailer. Well, it's actually not a trailer.
Yeah, what would you call it?
I'm serializing it on the YouTube channel. Every time.
With your reading, with sound effects. I love it. I think it's an amazing presentation. You told me you were going to do this. I did not see it until like Kayfabers once the video was done. It's amazing, and the art looks great. The way it's presented as panels, you know, I have seen some of these pages in their entirety. Seeing them as like where you get to see close-ups of the panels, it's beautiful.
Red Room by Ed Piskor, Chapter 1, Part 1. An urban legend no longer. All right, Davis, here are today's fine contestants. You gotta screw one of these monsters, you gotta marry one, and one has to get aced out. Bet you could catch asbestos from those bimbos, ain't I right, McGurk? Here comes one of them now. I have a lot of work to do, you guys. The judge is ready for you now, Ms. Tucci. No lawyer? No, ma'am, just daddy. Can you believe this bitch got me woke up at 11 a.m. for this bubblegum bullshit, Officer McDougal? A real tragedy, Pudgy. No rough stuff within earshot this time, Pudge. Hey, y'all see that? Sure, my pro recognizes the Dex Peckerwood. Hey, Slim, get in the judge's ear for me and I'll get her to knock the dust off your jammy free of charge next time. I'm very happy and content, Tobias. Davis, your wife, your kid, Haley. They got hit. Drunk driver. On the way to hospital now. Whose kid? Doesn't look good, man. My wife? I don't understand. Wagon's running. We could be there in 10. Oh, my heavens. Hollis? What about Brianna? She was with him, but she's okay. Dolores Fairfield. Haley Fairfield. Mr. Fairfield, my name is Beverly Chastain. I'll be your social worker for this matter. Before anything else, there is one very important, time-sensitive issue that we must address. As Haley's sole living guardian, where do you stand on the subject of organ donation? Brianna Fairfield. Oh, Bree, does it hurt? Daddy, they just told me about Mommy. These shots they're giving me, they're helping with that kind of pain, too. We got your prescription filled. It's in Mommy's bag. Did she give them to you? Oh, yeah. Never mind. P.U. These freaking townies handed us pure gold. We're gonna break the internet with this video, Billy. I can't even see the building that's attached to those things. This puts those factory farms in Alabama to shame. How deep is all that sewage, you think? Ugh, I could taste the turds in the air. When these cesspools get full, they vaporize the waste into the atmosphere. Super foul. Ready to see the atrocities on the other side of that drainage system? The Thelema family is going to be fully canceled once their hermit asses go viral. Damn it! Pass me another drone. Billy?
Discovered a glaring security issue that could cause our brothers to lose a little faith in your leadership if they were present.
Running this enterprise keeps me a very busy woman. Skip the jabs and get to the point.
The flaw has been present ever since you opted to stream the business on the dark web. Very embarrassing.
Horace!
This calling video you may recognize was recorded last spring. Exceptional turnout for the old Hemogoblin.
Goblin is our most consistent torture star, but there's always room for improvement.
Listen closely to the audio.
You have 2 more minutes of my time.
I'll fast forward to the end. Now, do you hear that? Listen beyond the yelping.
Is that what I think it is?
Yep, rain.
Fuck.
Our anonymity got slightly compromised to every customer in that live chat room. The feds, anybody could have checked the Doppler radar in real time for the whole country to deduce some basic geography of where we're broadcasting.
Soundproofing before spring will be a priority. Not now.
I guess when it rains it pours.
I know we're not supposed to bug you at the house, ma'am, but these hippies made it all the way to the pit, and
I'll buzz you in. They're not dead, are they?
No, ma'am. But I might have gave them the concussion disease all the football players have, though.
No other guards saw these trespassers?
All me, ma'am.
Good work. Tie them up and lock them in my study for now. Let's debrief in my media room before I question them. Whiskey?
Sure, wardrobe malfunction, ma'am.
Don't keep me waiting long. Lots to discuss.
Ma'am?
Grab a seat on the couch. Just push the clutter out of the way. We're renovating.
Thanks for the drink, ma'am. They woke when I was tying them up, but they ain't going no place. I really like that wig, ma'am.
Wig? It's important that I ask again to be clear. You're the only guard who knows these kids are here? No need for backup?
Correct. I can go days sometimes without seeing the guys along the perimeter of your land. If you don't mind me saying, you might could use a few more men out there to plug up the gaps. Look, look, look. But the day I need help to brain a couple of hippies is the day I retire.
Horace, you should... you should have warned me.
No telling what kind of pathogens are in redneck blood. Let's go see if those invaders are feds or not.
It's a new way to like we built this audience, and it's a new way to deliver comics online. You know, present the material in any way that the reader, quote unquote, because I'm reading it to you, will accept it. And it's never proven me wrong. It's always been a good thing for my work. This is a weird book, as you could tell from the video, and I'm going to have to do all the work I can to build this audience because it is such harrowing subject matter. But the audience is there.
Hey,
We've been
by the
priming
way,
pump.
show me the book that doesn't need all the work possible to build that audience.
I agree.
Like you got to do that. But I think it's a great idea, and it really is flattering what you've done with this first video.
Yeah, thanks, man. Like the sort of past year. Here's my past year in terms of like the career strategy. You know, I am not shy about revealing some of the things that we did. So like when Kayfabe starts, we put out 3 trailers cold before we put out anything, and we built an audience of about 1,500 subscribers before we put out episode 1 of Cartoonist Kayfabe. We've spent the year building a crew of 10,000, and I could present them my new comic, you see? So it's just this like constant thing of like bringing people to the fold and then delivering some new goods. Same goes for like built up an audience of 1,000. I'm going to be able to bring in cooler people like for like interviews and stuff like that. Like the audience number holds weight with certain people who are at a certain level in terms of like what they're trying to sell.
Sure.
So it's like the question is like what number do we have to hit to get Frank Miller on the Skype or some shit, to get Neil Gaiman to chop it up and tell us about season 1 and 2 of the Sandman Netflix TV show or some shit, you know. We fulfill a niche. There really are no other cartoonists fucking around like this. So it's like, as things go, it's like, let's make this the one-stop shop. Whenever you have a new book to hustle, you come to Cartoonist Kayfabe because we've created the Kayfabe effect. We talk about Dragon Chang online, and then the next day, eBay is dry, and my comic book shop is dry of Dragon Changs. That means something, dude.
Yeah, it does. It means we're coming for you, Tim Truman.
Yeah, he isn't that far away.
No, and one of the first, he was one of the early cartoonists that I was following and buying back issues of. So yes, we are definitely going to use this channel to leverage that kind of stuff, just to keep showing off what we love comics, and you know, presenting your comic the way you did in Red Room.
Yes.
It's one like I'm excited as part of this channel in that that's a new video for us.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like every video we post is a new video. That's kind of a new style. That's
Yeah.
a very different presentation, and it's awesome for anybody that's been watching you work or watching this channel in regards to, you know, learning how to make comics or seeing how we make comics. It's really interesting to see you go from like inking this stuff on live streams to like that's a finished presentation. That's like the equivalent of buying a book and reading it, or reading it on your iPad or whatever. It's like, here's the finished piece.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do is serialize the work. It's all going to be on the channel. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm doing is just building suitable scenes, like that I can make into nice, digestible, small videos. You know, it takes a lot of work to just like put that together. It took me 7 or 8 hours for 5 minutes of video, and it took me a month and a half, 2 months to draw the 9 pages that make that up. But whenever I get a suitable scene, and to be honest, I think when I finish this next page, that's going to be another chunk. That'll be page 15 or 16, and I think that'll be another scene that I can make a video with. But I'm going to just present you the book, and it'll create a situation where when you see this book, and it may be in issue form, it may be a graphic novel, I don't know, I haven't decided yet, it's early.
I'm excited for that part too.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that as it goes forward, but I've seen comments like that. It's really cool to see the process of like, you build that story, and then you start building the comic part.
Yeah.
And there's flexibility.
Yeah.
You know, it could be a graphic novel, it could be issues, it could be both.
The video was not live for half an hour when the offers started rolling in. So it's gonna be on paper, like it's gonna find a home. But my thing is, let's get it super popular. Let's make it real attractive. Let's be the hot girl in the room, and make it real sexy, just so that does well.
It does more than just do well in a financial sense. It opens creative doors for you. It means that if you have the idea of like, I always think of like nice book editions of things. I remember there was a From Hell edition that was like all black, like the edges of the pages were black.
Interesting, I never saw that.
It was like a hardcover deluxe. I don't know how many of them they made, but that's what you allow.
Yeah.
Like whenever you build up a big readership for Hip Hop Family Tree, it meant that part of what you were asking publishers for was, this is the format I want.
Right.
And so that's what it buys you. It's not just, oh, here's a bigger advance, or you sell more copies. It's also, I have a real vision for what I want to make here. You want to partner with me, publisher? I want to make it this way. We got to make it this way. So you buy yourself that creative freedom.
Yep. And it's still so early. A lot of people are asking, like, when does this drop? I am drawing page 15 of at least of around 128 of this volume. So it's going to be quite a while. But we go home tomorrow. I'm going to be able to get a little work done. We go to Heroes in Charlotte next week, and we stop off for a cup of coffee in Richmond for a night, do some business there. But when we get back, it's all comics all the time for me until I finish the book. It's going to take months and months, maybe the better part of 2020.
Right.
Probably 2 times a week there will be inking live streams, man. Whenever I have a new page that's penciled, I'll blaze up that webcam and hang out with you guys, field questions, and just like share that energy. We met 2 dudes today who have sat around with us on our live streams, made comics with us, listening to the channel. That is fucking dope, because it's like it's the cyclical like energy transfer that I get from the chat whenever dudes are hanging out, drawing stuff, sharing the images, man, hitting me up on the DM on Instagram and like, yo, man, I made this today while you were chilling there, and it's like checkmate. Nick Pyle, like this stuff that dude's doing is like insane, and he'll hang out at the chats, man.
Yeah, it's really great. It's
a lot of crazy people come through there.
I love hearing people talk about the stuff they're drawing.
Hillary
Barta
came through there
while listening, while watching. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, Ed, you talk about like energizing. It definitely has that. It's really cool to have that kind of like energy exchange.
So here's a question, Jimmy. When are you going to start live streaming this thing you're working on? What is it again?
It is. I'll tell you one thing. It's not Lobo versus Captain Marvel.
See, I was going to go in the other direction. I was going to secretly say, like, we should start teasing it to that end. But you know what will happen, man? DC will bring some jobbers in and make that.
By the way, I want to do that one, so this is manifesting the idea out there.
Yeah. Just make this thing that you're working on a heater.
What I need to do is work faster, because I have a bunch of ideas that I want, and I can't get to them fast enough.
You're a runner, man. You run marathons. You'll be around a while.
It's true. You do have to pace yourself.
Yeah, you'll be around a while, dude. It'll be good.
You said jobbers, and that did cross my path. Actually, on the plane ride here, one of the podcasts I was listening to was the ARN podcast.
Yes.
And Conrad, they were talking about enhancement talent. And Arn Anderson doesn't like the word jobber.
Yeah.
In regards to the enhancement talent, he prefers the term carpenter.
Yeah.
Because they're building, they're helping to build the guy they're working with. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It was a new wrestling term that I had not heard before.
You know what? Now that you heard it, you're gonna hear it more, because Cornette will call them that too sometimes.
You know, I love terminology like this.
Yeah.
And the other one that I heard today was raw keys.
Yes.
Which is comic book term. That's not a wrestling one.
And it's not a Noriega fucking cocaine.
No, we're not that cool.
Cartel term either.
Comics aren't gonna come up with that. It's key issues. It's people that are interested in first appearances, things like that. So a raw key is one that's not been graded by CGC. It's not slabbed. It's raw. And the key refers to the significance of the issue.
Yeah, it's fucking bullshit, man. It's
all I hear is Rockies. Like, I just want to talk movies whenever I hear Rockies.
See, that goes to show, it's a Rorschach test, man. You think of Rocky, and I think of Scarface.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do much better than that, so...
Get the fuck out of here,
Yeah,
man.
I think so. Before we fall asleep.
We need to catch a nap before we catch this plane in a few hours, man. All right, Kayfabers, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, follow the YouTube channel, hit the bell icon. We'll notify you whenever we have fresh videos available.
You can find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merch like this one I'm wearing at our spread shop. There's a link below the video to that.
Dude, give them the merchant orders.
Read more comics.